Mommy hurts so much. What should we do now? The small voice broke the quiet air of the cemetery. It trembled like the last leaf on a cold November tree. Richard Collins stopped moving. He had come to visit his wife's grave, not to find two little girls kneeling in front of it. Their thin shoulders shivered in the wind. The older girl, maybe 6 years old, whispered to the stone, as if it could answer. The younger twin held her sleeve, eyes full of tears. Richard gripped the flowers in his hand. His breath showed in the cold air as he stepped closer. "Girls," he said softly. "Are you all right?" Both turned at once. Fourth, two faces, the same round cheeks, same dark curls, same scared eyes. The older one stood straight, trying to be brave. "We didn't mean to bother you, sir," she said. "We came to see Mom." "Your mom?" Richard asked, surprised. The smaller girl nodded. "She said she would be here when she got tired." He looked down at the grave. "Grace Collins, beloved wife, a light to all." His chest felt tight. Grace had been gone 2 years. They never had children. He had buried all his dreams with her. But now 2 little girls stood here, calling her Mom. "What are your names?" he asked softly. "I'm Anna," said the older one. "This is Mia. How old are you?" 6, Anna said. "We're twins." He gave a small smile. "I can see that." He noticed their torn gloves and thin coats. Their shoes didn't match. "Are you here alone?" Anna nodded after a pause. "Our mom's in the hospital. She said if she got too sick, we should find Mrs. Collins. She promised she'd help us." Richard blinked. "Mrs. Collins?" "Yes, sir," Anna said. "Mom said Mrs. Collins was our guardian angel." The world seemed to spin for a moment. Grace had worked at the hospital for years, helping poor families. She never talked about it at home. "What's your mother's name?" he asked quietly. "Angela Bennett," Anna said. The name hit him hard, like a memory he couldn't reach. "How did she know my wife?" Mia opened her pink backpack and pulled out a small plastic ID card. Grace's smiling face looked back at him. "Mercy Hospital. Volunteer. Mom said this lady helped her when she was in trouble," Mia whispered. "She said if something bad happened, Mrs. Collins would keep her promise." Richard's knees felt weak. He bent down to meet their eyes. "Where have you been staying?" "At the shelter," Anna said. "But it's full now. So sometimes we sleep at the bus stop. It's warm there." "You can't stay at a bus stop," he said firmly. "It's not safe." Anna's lips trembled. "We didn't know where else to go. Mommy said come here. Mrs. Collins would know what to do." When the girls said their mother told them to find Mrs. Collins, something broke open in Richard's heart. Maybe in ours too. Because kindness never dies, it only finds new hands to carry it on. If this moment touched your heart, tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that warm the soul. The wind moved through the cemetery, shaking the old gate. Richard looked at Grace's name carved in stone and felt the ache return. Even in death, she was still helping people, still keeping promises he never knew. He turned to the girls. "You can't stay here tonight," he said gently. "Come with me. I'll take you somewhere warm." Anna hesitated. "But you don't even know us." "I knew your mom's friend," Richard said softly. "And if Grace made a promise, I'll keep it." He reached out his hand. After a pause, Anna placed her small palm in his. Mia followed, clutching her coat. Together they walked out of the cemetery under a sky painted gold. At the gate, Richard looked back at Grace's grave. The lilies in his hand shook. "Grace," he whispered, "what have you done?" They drove in silence through the city. The twins sat close in the back seat, watching the streetlights flash by. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "A little," Mia said. "We had crackers from the shelter," Richard stopped at a small diner. The waitress, a kind woman his age, looked surprised to see him with two little girls. But she smiled. 3 grilled cheese sandwiches, he said, and hot chocolate. Anna folded her hands on the table. Thank you, sir. Mia smiled shyly. Mom says to always say thank you. Richard's chest tightened. Grace used to say the same. Kindness doesn't wait to be earned. After dinner, he drove them to Mercy Hospital. The smell of medicine hit him hard. Grace had spent her last nights here, talking about peace beyond pain. He went to the nurse's desk. Angela Bennett, he said. Room 214, the nurse said. She's in critical care. He nodded. Thank you. Anna held his coat as they walked down the hall. Do you think she's awake? I hope so, Richard said. She'll be happy to see you. The room was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of a monitor. A woman lay still, pale, and weak. Mom, Anna breathed, running to her side. Angela's eyes opened slowly. My girls, she whispered. You found her? Richard stepped closer. You mean Grace? Angela nodded weakly. She kept her promise. What? Promise? He asked. Her eyes went to the twins. A faint smile touched her lips. That they'd never be alone. The monitor beeped softly. The girls climbed onto the bed, holding their mother's arms. Richard stood there, silent. Grace had always said she wanted her kindness to live on. And somehow, it had. As he watched the two girls cling to their mother, he realized Grace hadn't left him alone. She had sent him a reason to live again. The slow beep of the monitor filled the room. Richard stood near the bed, unsure what to do. The twins whispered softly to their mother. Angela looked weak, her skin pale under the bright light. Her breathing was thin and rough. After a moment, her eyes found Richard. You're Grace's husband, she said quietly. He nodded. Yes. Richard Collins. She talked about you, Angela whispered. Said you were lost. Said she hoped you'd find your way again. Her lips curved into a small smile. He wanted to ask what she meant, but her eyes were closing again. A nurse walked in, checking the machines. She needs rest, sir, she said kindly. Let her sleep. Richard nodded and led the girls into the hall. Outside, the lights felt too bright. Anna looked up. Is she going to be okay? She's very sick, he said gently. But the doctors are trying. Mom said she doesn't want to go to heaven yet. Mia whispered. She said we still need her. Richard swallowed hard. Then let's hope she keeps fighting. He took them to a nearby hotel instead of the shelter. The manager, an old man with kind eyes, didn't ask questions when Richard paid for 2 rooms. Inside, the girl stood quietly near the bed. You can wash up, Richard said softly. There are clean towels. Mia hesitated. Are you sure it's okay? It's okay, he said with a smile. You're safe here. When they came out wearing big t-shirts the staff had found, they looked even smaller. Richard had ordered soup and chicken tenders. The girls ate quietly, glancing at him sometimes. After a while, Anna asked, You really knew Mrs. Collins? I did, he said. She was my wife. She was nice, wasn't she? He smiled sadly. The nicest person I ever knew. Mom said Mrs. Collins helped her when no one else did, Mia said softly. She paid the hospital so we could be born. She came every week to see us. Richard froze. She never told me that, he said quietly. Maybe she didn't want you to worry, Anna said. Later that night, when the girls were asleep, Richard sat by the window watching the city lights. Grace had been gone 2 years, yet he was still learning who she truly was. He could almost hear her voice. You always chased success, Richard. I cared about people. He sighed deeply. For years, he had lived behind the walls of grief. And now, 2 little girls had walked right through them. Richard stepped forward and pulled the crying girls into his arms. The nurse came running, then slowed when she saw the truth on their faces. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Richard held the twins close. Their tiny bodies shook against him. "She's gone, isn't she?" Anna asked softly. "Yes," he said gently. "But she's at peace now. She said Mrs. Collins would be our guardian." Mia sobbed. "Does that mean you?" Richard couldn't answer at first. Finally, he nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. It means me." That night, he didn't take them back to the hotel. He took them home. The Collins estate lay quiet outside the city, surrounded by tall maples and the smell of rain. The girls fell asleep in the car, their heads resting together. Richard carried them inside one by one, laying them in the guest room and tucking the blanket under their chins. The house felt different that night, not empty, but alive again. Soft breathing. Faint dreams. He stood in the doorway watching them sleep. In the warm flicker of the lamp, he thought he saw Grace's smile shining through their faces. Later, in his study, he poured a small glass of whiskey and sat before the fire. He opened an old photo album. Grace was there laughing with patience, holding newborn babies at the hospital. Then he stopped. A photo of Grace with a young black woman smiling down at 2 infants wrapped in pink blankets. Under it, written in her neat handwriting, "Angela and her miracles." He traced the words with his finger. Grace had known. She had planned for this moment. He looked toward the hallway where the girls slept. "Grace," he whispered, "you've done it again." The wind rattled the windows. But for the first time in years, the sound didn't feel lonely. It felt like an answer. The next morning, laughter echoed softly down the hall. For a second, Richard thought he was dreaming. It sounded like Grace, warm, alive, filling the house the way she once did. But when he stepped out, he saw Anna and Mia. They sat on the kitchen counter, legs swinging, giggling as the housekeeper, Mrs. Turner, showed them how to crack eggs. "You can't hit it too hard, honey," Mrs. Turner said, her gray bun wobbling. "Or it'll explode." Anna tapped the egg gently on the bowl. It split neatly. "Like this?" "Perfect," Mrs. Turner laughed. When she noticed Richard in the doorway, she smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Collins. Looks like you've got early risers." He smiled faintly. "That's new. They're sweet girls, Mrs. Turner said, though I'll admit I was surprised when they appeared." She lowered her voice. "They your wife's kin?" Richard hesitated. "Something like that." Mrs. Turner studied him for a moment but didn't ask more. "Breakfast will be ready soon." Mia jumped down from the counter and ran to him, clutching a whisk like a trophy. "We're helping. Mrs. Turner says we're chefs now." "Is that so?" Richard crouched down. "Then, I guess I'm the lucky customer." "Do you like pancakes?" she asked eagerly. "I love pancakes," he said. He didn't. Not really. Grace had always been the one who did, but saying it felt right. Anna smiled shyly. "Mom used to make them on Saturdays, with blueberries." Her voice broke a little on the word mom. Richard's heart twisted. "We can do that here too," he said softly. "If you'd like." After breakfast, he called his lawyer, Thomas Reed, a friend for 20 years. Loyal. Serious. A man who trusted rules more than feelings. When Thomas arrived later that morning, he looked politely curious. 2 little girls were chasing each other across the living room rug. "You've been busy," Thomas said, setting his briefcase down. "Care to explain?" Richard told him. Everything: the cemetery, the grave, Angela's last words. Thomas listened without interrupting, though his brow tightened more with each detail. "And you've brought them here?" "Yes," Richard said. "They have nowhere else." "You do know how this looks," Thomas warned. "The press will love this story." 2 black children living with one of America's richest white men. People will talk. Richard's jaw tightened. Let them. Thomas sighed. You can't ignore optics, Richard. The board's nervous about you already. This could make it worse. Grace helped their mother, Richard said quietly. These girls are her responsibility now, which means they're mine. Thomas studied him for a long moment. You sound like her, he said softly. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. When Thomas left, Richard stood by the window, watching the twins chase each other through the garden. Their laughter drifted through the open door like sunlight. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a tomb. That afternoon, he drove the girls back to the hospital for Angela's release papers. The social worker, a brisk woman named Carla Simmons, met them in the lobby. Mr. Collins, she said, flipping through her file. I understand you've taken the children in temporarily? That's right. We'll need to discuss long-term plans, she said. Family placement, foster options, guardianship. Were you and Miss Bennett related? No, Richard said. But my late wife was their godmother. Carla adjusted her glasses. Legally, that's not binding. Morally, it is, he said, meeting her eyes. Mr. Collins, I don't doubt your intentions, she said kindly. But this process takes time, evaluations, background checks, court approvals. Do what you must, he said firmly. But until then, they stay with me. Anna squeezed his hand tight. Carla hesitated, then nodded. I'll start the paperwork. As they walked out of the hospital, Mia looked up at him. Do we have to leave now? No, he said gently. You're coming home with me. Mia smiled, her eyes shining with fragile trust. On the drive back, the sun broke through the clouds, golden light spreading across the windshield. Anna leaned her head against the window. Do you think Mom's with Mrs. Collins now? I think, Richard said softly. They're both watching over us. That night, the twins insisted on saying a prayer before bed. They knelt beside the guest bed, hands folded. Dear God, Anna whispered. Please tell Mommy and Mrs. Collins we're okay. And thank you for the nice man who gave us pancakes. Richard stood quietly in the doorway. His throat burned. When they were asleep, he wandered through the halls of his house, past photos of awards, charity dinners, smiling faces he barely remembered. Success had been his armor for years. Now, it felt empty. In his study, he opened one of Grace's old journals, the one she'd kept during her hospital work. The first page carried her handwriting. Kindness is not a duty. It's a proof that our hearts still work. He turned a few pages. One entry stopped him. Angela Bennett. Pregnant and alone. I paid her bills. I told her she'd never be alone again. I hope I can keep that promise. He closed the book and stared at the fire. You kept it, Grace, he whispered. And now it's my turn. The next morning, soft daylight slipped through the windows. Richard found the twins curled up on the couch, wrapped in one blanket, fast asleep. He stood there for a while, just watching. Outside, the city hummed faintly. He had lost so much: his wife, his purpose, his faith in goodness. But somehow, in a way he couldn't explain, Grace had given him a second chance. As he watched the 2 little girls sleep, he realized that keeping her promise might be the way back to light. When Richard woke again later, the house was already alive with movement. He heard small feet racing down the hall, and Mia's high laugh echoing after them. For a moment, he just lay there, listening. The sound filled the quiet spaces Grace had left behind. When he walked into the kitchen, Mrs. Turner had the girls lined up at the table. Bowls of oatmeal and a plate of strawberries sat between them. Anna looked up, spoon in hand. Morning, Mr. Collins, she said brightly. Morning, he replied with a soft smile. He hadn't realized how warm that word could feel. Mrs. Turner poured him coffee. "They've already done their chores," she said, amused. "Well, their version of chores. Tried folding towels. Bless their hearts." Anna puffed her chest. "We helped." Richard looked at the uneven pile of towels. "You did," he said. "And they look perfect." After breakfast, he took them to a small park by the river. Grace had loved this place. She'd feed the ducks and say that stillness was a kind of prayer. The girls ran ahead, laughing as their voices echoed over the water. For the first time in years, Richard left his phone in the car. He sat on a bench, the same one where Grace once read him her favorite poem about hope. The sunlight danced on the river, turning the water to diamonds. Anna climbed beside him. "Mrs. Turner said you make computers," she said curiously. "Something like that?" He smiled faintly. "I used to build programs that help people work faster." "Then why don't you do it now?" She asked. He hesitated. "Because I stopped believing it mattered." Anna frowned. "Mrs. Collins wouldn't like that." He chuckled softly. "No," he said. "She wouldn't." Mia ran up, holding a yellow leaf shaped like a heart. "Look, it's like love." He took it gently. "Yes," he said quietly. "Exactly like love." On the drive home, they passed a row of billboards with his company's logo. Collins Tech, building the future. The words felt hollow now. When they reached the house, a black SUV waited in the driveway. Richard frowned. Standing beside it was a tall man in a dark suit, Robert Davidson, the head of the Collins Tech board. "Richard," Davidson said, his tone sharp, "we need to talk." Anna and Mia clung to his coat. "It's all right," Richard said softly. "Go inside with Mrs. Turner." When the girls were gone, Davidson folded his arms. "You've missed 2 board meetings. The press is asking questions." He glanced toward the house. "And now you're fostering 2 children?" Richard's face hardened. "Their mother was dying. My wife made them a promise. I'm keeping it." Davidson lowered his voice. "You have an image to protect. People are saying grief has—" "Stop," Richard cut in. Grace believed compassion mattered more than image. "If that costs me a headline, so be it." Davidson sighed. "You can't save everyone." "Maybe not," Richard said quietly. "But I can save someone." When the man left, Richard stood in the driveway for a while, the wind tugging at his coat. Grace once told him that people only argued against kindness because they feared it would ask too much of them. Inside, the twins were building a fort out of couch cushions. They looked up as he entered. "Did that man bring trouble?" Anna asked carefully. "No," Richard said with a smile. "Just noise." That evening, they watched an old movie together. The girls curled against him on the couch, laughing at parts Grace once loved. The flickering light danced across their faces. For the first time in a long time, Richard felt peace, the kind that comes not from money or success, but from giving something back. And as the night grew quiet, he looked toward the sky and whispered, "Grace, I think I finally understand." The movie was one of Grace's favorites. Friend. The girls laughed through the black and white slapstick scenes, their giggles bubbling into the quiet room. When the credits rolled, Anna yawned and leaned against him. "Are we staying here forever?" she asked, sleepily. "Do you want to?" She nodded. "It feels like home," Mia whispered, half asleep. "Even the walls sound kind." Richard's chest ached, that tender, healing ache that comes when something broken starts to mend. After they went to bed, he sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames. Grace's picture rested on the mantel, her smile soft and knowing. You weren't just helping Angela. You were helping me. He opened his laptop for the first time in months. The glow of the screen felt cold and strange. Slowly, he began typing an email to the board. Effective immediately. I'll be taking an indefinite leave of absence. My priorities have changed. The next morning, he took the girls shopping for school supplies. They picked pink and purple backpacks and argued happily over crayon colors. As they left the store, a camera flashed. Richard heard the shutter but ignored it. Hours later, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Tired billionaire resurfaces with 2 mystery children. He exhaled slowly. It had begun. That night, as he tucked the girls in, Anna looked up. Why do people take pictures of you? Because they don't understand me, he said gently. Or maybe they just want to. Mom said people fear what they don't understand. Mia murmured. But Mrs. Collins said, love fixes that. Richard smiled faintly. She was right. When he turned off the light, the house fell silent again. But it wasn't empty. He stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. For the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider looking in. He felt part of the world again. He didn't know what storms were coming, but one thing was clear. Grace had given him a mission no headline could twist. He would protect Anna and Mia not out of pity, but out of love. And love, he realized, was the only legacy worth keeping. The next few days passed in a fragile rhythm that almost felt normal. Richard woke early again, not for work, but because laughter now filled his mornings. The house had changed. It breathed again. Anna and Mia's drawings covered the fridge. Their little shoes waited by the door, like a promise someone would always come home. On Wednesday, he stood on the patio, sipping coffee. The twins chased each other through the garden. Anna's yellow scarf flew behind her like a banner. Mia's laugh rang through the cold air like music. It was a sound Grace would have loved. For the first time in 2 years, Richard smiled without guilt. Then his phone buzzed. It was Thomas Reed. Morning, Thomas, Richard said. Richard, you need to see what's spreading, Thomas replied. It's on every news feed. Richard went inside and turned on the TV. His face filled the screen, his house in the background, the girls blurred beside him. The headline read, Tainted Legacy Billionaire Hides. 2 black children in his estate. Stomach dropped. A commentator's voice followed. Is this charity, scandal, or something darker? Collins Tech refuses to comment. He switched it off. The silence afterward was thick and heavy. The girls ran in, laughing, their cheeks pink from the cold. Richard forced a smile. How about a trip to the bookstore? Mia clapped her hands. Can we get fairy tales? Anything you want, he said softly. He knew he couldn't protect them from the noise forever, but he would try. At the bookstore, they picked out storybooks and a stuffed dog they named Pumpkin. When they reached the counter, the cashier, a woman with kind eyes, looked at him curiously. They yours? She asked, pretending to sound casual. They're family, Richard said simply. Her smile flickered. You're doing a good thing. He nodded, saying nothing more. Outside, a man with a camera waited by the car. Mr. Collins, he shouted. Who are the girls? Is this a secret family? Anna, but shrank behind him. Why is he yelling? Richard opened the car door and guided them inside. He's just confused, he said calmly. Are we in trouble? Mia whispered. He crouched, meeting her eyes. No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. When they got home, Thomas was waiting on the porch, arms crossed. I told you the media would twist this, he said. I don't care, Richard answered flatly. You should. Thomas said. "The board's calling an emergency vote. They think you're unstable. They might try to force you out." Richard looked past him, through the window. The twins were showing Mrs. Turner their new books, laughing without fear. "If I lose the company, I lose it," he said quietly. "But I won't abandon them." Thomas's tone softened. "Richard, you're not just protecting two kids. You're fighting a system that doesn't forgive. Be smart about it." "Grace wouldn't have walked away," Richard said. "And neither will I." That night, he couldn't sleep. His phone buzzed again and again. Reporters, investors, people he hadn't heard from in years, all demanding answers. He ignored them. Instead, he walked down the hall and peeked into the girls' room. They were curled together under blankets, sleeping soundly. On the nightstand sat the stuffed dog and an old photo of Grace smiling, her hair blowing in the wind, holding a newborn in her arms. Angela's baby. Maybe. Richard felt something shift inside him, a resolve sharper than grief. The next morning, he made a decision. He called a press conference. Thomas nearly dropped his coffee. "You're inviting the press? After all this?" "Yes," Richard said. "I'm done hiding." At noon, the front lawn filled with cameras and reporters. Richard stood on the steps, Anna and Mia beside him. Their small hands gripped his jacket as voices shouted questions from every direction. He raised his hand for silence. "My name is Richard Collins," he began. "2 years ago, I lost my wife, Grace. She was the heart of everything I believed in. Before she died, she made a promise to a woman named Angela Bennett that her daughters would never be alone." He looked down at Anna and Mia, then back at the crowd. "These are Angela's daughters. Grace kept her promise in spirit, and now I'm keeping it in her name." The reporters fell quiet. Only the wind and the faint click of cameras filled the air. "You can write whatever headlines you want," Richard said firmly. "Say what you will about me. But remember this, if compassion ruins my reputation, then it was never worth having." For a moment, no one spoke. Then a single voice asked softly, "What will happen to the girls now?" "They'll stay here," Richard said simply. "They're home." The shouting started again, but he didn't answer. He turned and guided the twins back inside. Anna looked up at him with wide, proud eyes. "You were brave," she whispered. He smiled, kneeling beside her. "You think so?" She nodded seriously. "Mrs. Collins would be proud." His throat tightened. "I hope so, Anna. I really hope so." That evening, the girls sat by the fireplace, drawing pictures on scraps of paper. Mia held up her drawing, a tall man holding hands with 2 little girls beneath a sky full of hearts. "It's us," she said proudly. And that's Mommy and Mrs. Collins in the clouds." Richard took the picture gently. His eyes burned. "It's beautiful," he whispered. When they went to bed, he lingered in the doorway, listening to their soft breathing. The noise of the world no longer mattered. His house, once silent and hollow, was full of life again. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. There would be backlash, gossip, and consequences. But as he stood there in the quiet light, he felt Grace's presence, gentle, steady, like a warm hand on his shoulder. "Whatever comes next," he whispered, "we'll face it together." And for the first time, he believed it. The next morning, the air outside the Collins estate was calm. No cameras, no shouting, only birds and sunlight. Richard stood by the study window, coffee in hand, watching the golden light fall across the garden. For the first time in days, peace. In the kitchen, Mrs. Turner hummed an old gospel tune while she cooked. Mia set the table, though most of the napkins were crooked. Anna stood on a stool, flipping pancakes with practiced care. Richard leaned in the doorway. You're becoming quite the chef, Anna. She grinned. Mrs. Turner says pancakes make people happy. They do, Richard said softly. Especially when they're made with love. After breakfast, he walked the girls to the car. Today was their first official day of school. A small private academy just outside the city. Grace had once donated to it, saying every child deserved to feel safe. Anna wore her yellow scarf again. Mia had her hair in 2 pink ribbons. Both looked nervous but proud. You'll do great, Richard said, kneeling to their level. Just be kind. The rest will follow. Mia hugged him tight. Will you pick us up? Of course, he said. You're stuck with me now. The drive was quiet at first. The girls watched the city slide by. When they arrived, a few parents stared, some curious, some cold. 2 black girls walking beside one of the richest white men in New York was a sight people didn't know how to read. Richard saw the looks but kept his focus on the girls. Head high, he whispered. You belong here. The principal, Mrs. Jenkins, met them at the gate. Welcome, Anna. Welcome, Mia. We're so happy to have you. Anna clung to his hand. It's okay, Richard said softly. I'll be here at 3. She nodded bravely and let go. As they disappeared through the doors, Richard felt a familiar ache, the same one he used to feel watching Grace walk away at airports. Love and fear always walked side by side. Later at the office, Thomas was pacing in the conference room. You caused an earthquake, he said the moment Richard entered. I just spoke the truth, Richard replied, sitting down. You also dropped the company's stock by 8% overnight, Thomas said. Richard didn't flinch. It'll recover. Or it won't. Either way, I'm done living by numbers. Thomas stared at him, half worried, half amazed. You've really changed, haven't you? Richard looked out the window. His reflection was faint against the skyline. Maybe I'm finally becoming who Grace always believed I could be. That afternoon, he drove back to the school. The twins waited by the gate, backpacks bouncing, smiles bright. Mia ran first. I made a friend. That's wonderful, he said, lifting her up. What's their name? Sarah, she said proudly. She has freckles and likes frogs. Anna smiled too, though hers was smaller. It was okay, she said quietly. Richard brushed her hair back gently. Sometimes okay is enough, he said. They walked to the car, hand in hand, the sun soft behind them. And for the first time since Grace's passing, Richard Collins felt whole again, not because of what he'd gained, but because of who he'd chosen to love. Some kids at school had asked why the twins lived with him. Richard hesitated. What did you tell them? Anna smiled shyly. That you're our family. Because you promised. His heart twisted. That's exactly right, he whispered. On the way home, they stopped at the park. The afternoon light was soft and golden, the kind Grace once loved to photograph. The girls played on the swings while Richard sat on the same bench he and Grace had shared years ago. He felt someone approach and turned. A woman stood beside him, neatly dressed. Her eyes sharp but calm. Mr. Collins? She asked. I'm Detective Lorna Hayes. May I have a word? Richard's stomach tightened. About what? She handed him a small card. Angela Bennett's case. There were inconsistencies in her hospital file. I need to confirm a few things. He frowned. What kind of inconsistencies? Her record says she had no next of kin, Hayes explained. But someone paid all her hospital bills in cash. No name, no trace. We thought it was a donor, but after your press conference, the hospital flagged it. Richard stiffened. Grace handled those payments. The detective nodded slowly. Then maybe you can help us find where they came from. It's likely nothing, but there's talk that Angela might have been pressured to sign documents before she died. The word pressured hung in the air like smoke. I'll cooperate fully, Richard said, his voice tight. But Grace would never hurt her. I believe that, Hayes said gently. But I think someone else might have. When she left, Richard sat alone as the wind tugged at his coat. That night, after tucking the girls into bed, he walked into Grace's old study. Everything was still, her books in order, her pen resting where she'd left it. The air smelled faintly of lavender and paper. He opened her laptop. Maybe somewhere in it, there was an answer. Among old donation files, one folder stood out, Angela Final Trust. It was encrypted. He stared at the glowing screen, pulse quickening. Grace had never hidden anything from him, except maybe this. If she had locked it, there was a reason. Richard leaned back, staring at the city lights outside the window. For the first time since Grace's death, grief turned into something else. Determination. He would open that file. He would find the truth about Angela Bennett, and he would protect Anna and Mia from whatever shadows were still chasing them. The next morning, Richard woke with a sharp sense of purpose. The encrypted file had haunted him all night. He had tried 3 of Grace's passwords, her birthday, their wedding date, even her favorite quote about mercy. But nothing worked. It wasn't like her to hide things unless she was protecting someone. Downstairs, the smell of cinnamon and toast filled the air. The twins were dressed for school, their laughter echoing through the hall. For a moment, Richard just stood in the doorway, watching. He wanted to hold on to this peace before he opened another door to the past. Anna noticed him first. "Morning, Mr. Collins." "Morning, sweetheart," he said with a smile. "Ready for school?" "Yes, sir," Anna said proudly, straightening her uniform. "Mia says we should sing in the car today," Mia added with a grin. "Oh?" Richard laughed. "And you think I can sing?" She giggled. "We'll teach you." Their laughter filled the kitchen, bright, innocent, real. He felt a warm ache inside. Grace must have trusted Angela deeply to leave such light in his care. He kissed their heads before sending them off with Mrs. Turner. Then he went straight to his study. The laptop sat, waiting a locked door to a truth he wasn't sure he wanted. He called his old tech advisor Mark Whitman, a quiet, loyal man who once managed Collins Tech's encryption systems. "Mark," Richard said carefully, "I need help opening a personal file. It's one of Grace's. Encrypted." A pause. "You sure you want me looking into something she locked herself?" "Yes," Richard said softly. "I think she wanted me to find it one day." "Send it over," Mark said. "Give me a few hours." By noon, Richard drove into the city to meet Detective Hayes again. She waited in a quiet cafe off Fifth Avenue, where the sound of cups and voices blended into a soft murmur. "Mr. Collins," she said as he sat down. "Thank you for coming." "You mentioned Angela might have been forced to sign something," Richard said. "What kind of documents?" Hayes opened a folder. "A revised will and a custody consent form. Both give her children to a third party. They're dated 3 days before she entered the hospital." Richard's chest tightened. "That's impossible. She was barely conscious then." "That's what caught our attention," Hayes said. "The papers were filed by an attorney connected to Collins Enterprises, a man named Robert Davidson." Richard froze. Davidson, his father's old right-hand man, the same man who had warned him against taking in the girls. "I know him," Richard said slowly. "He's still on my board." Hayes studied his face. "Then you'll understand why I'm asking. Was he acting on your behalf?" "No," Richard said firmly. "Never." She slid the folder across the table. "Then find out whose behalf it was. Because if those signatures are fake, someone used your wife's promise and your name to control Angela Bennett's life." When she left, Richard sat in silence, staring at the papers. They looked ordinary typed words, legal terms, but they smelled of betrayal. Grace's kindness had been twisted. And maybe it had gotten Angela killed. Back at home, Mark called. "You were right," he said. The file wasn't meant to stay locked forever. Grace used a delayed access code. Took me a while, but I cracked it. Richard's voice was tight. What's inside? Letters, journal pages, and one scanned file labeled Confidential Agreement. Angela Bennett. Sending it now. Richard opened the email. Grace's words appeared on screen, her handwriting neat and gentle. July 8th. Angela's health is failing. I've paid her bills through the private fund, but she's scared, not of dying, of leaving the girls behind. Someone came asking for signatures. Said it was for medical coverage. She didn't understand it. I fear she signed something dangerous. I'll have Davidson review it quietly. He owes William too many favors to refuse me. Richard's hands trembled. Davidson again. He scrolled further. July 10th, Angela's worse. I confronted Davidson. He said he handled it. His tone scared me. If something happens to me, Richard must know not everyone around us is who they seem. The girls must be protected. If you're reading this, my love, trust in your heart, not the company. Richard leaned back, trembling. Grace had known. She'd seen the rot inside their perfect world long before he had. When Mrs. Turner brought in tea, she stopped at the sight of his pale face. You look like you've seen a ghost, sir. Maybe I have, he whispered. That evening, he sat with the twins in the living room. They watched cartoons under a blanket, the glow of the screen flickering across their faces. Anna looked up. You look sad, Uncle Richard. He smiled weakly. Just thinking about your mom. And Mrs. Collins. Mia climbed into his lap. Mom said some people pretend to be nice but aren't. But she also said kind people always win in the end. He hugged her tight, his throat burning. Your mom was a very smart woman. When they went to bed, he stayed awake long after. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. In his hand was a printed copy of Grace's letter, the one that ended with her last words, "Trust your heart." He knew now Angela's death and Grace's guilt were tied together. Someone had used their kindness for profit, and that someone had to be stopped. Before dawn, he made a call. His voice was calm, cold. Thomas, he said, I need everything on Robert Davidson's legal work for the past 5 years. Trusts, estates, medical accounts, everything. Richard, that's thousands of pages, Thomas said. Then start now, Richard replied. Because I think Davidson's been selling more than contracts. I think he's been selling lives. He hung up and turned toward the window. Dawn's first light broke across the skyline. In the stillness, he could almost hear Grace's voice again. Kindness is not duty. It's proof that our hearts still work. His heart still worked. But now, it burned for justice. The next few days blurred into motion and worry. Richard barely slept. He split his time between home and the office, pretending everything was normal while secretly digging through Davidson's past. The board was still uneasy after his press conference, but he didn't care. The world could judge him all it wanted. He had something far more important to protect. On the third morning, Thomas showed up at the townhouse carrying a thick folder and a heavy look. You're not going to like what I found, he said, placing it on the desk. Richard's jaw tightened. Show me. Thomas opened the file. 3 years ago, Davidson created a fake charity, the Grace Outreach Fund. He told everyone it was your wife's project. All donations ran through a blind trust owned by his law firm. Richard's stomach turned. Who was the first person it helped? Angela Bennett, Thomas said quietly. He paid her hospital bills with that money, then pulled out $200,000 to $100,000 in cash right before she died. No record where it went. 2 weeks later, he transferred her apartment and assets to a shell company. By the time he passed, she owned nothing. Richard stared at the papers, fury rising like fire. He robbed her, he whispered. Thomas nodded grimly, and he hid it all under Grace's name. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The room felt cold, thick with betrayal. Finally, Richard said, Then we expose him. Thomas hesitated. That won't be easy. Davidson's still on your board. He's been here 30 years. If you go after him, he'll fight back. He knows every secret the company has. Then I'll burn down the whole closet, Richard said. I won't let him stain Grace's name. Thomas studied him. You've changed. A year ago, you'd have covered this up to keep the numbers clean. Grace changed me, Richard said softly. And now 2 little girls are counting on me to do what's right. That night, after Thomas left, Richard sat at his desk rereading Grace's letters. One line stopped him again. The truth will cost something. But silence costs more. He whispered the words aloud. Then silence ends tonight. The next morning, he called an emergency board meeting. When he walked into the glass conference room, every seat was filled. The directors' faces were stiff, wary. At the head of the table sat Robert Davidson, silver hair neat, smile thin and confident. Mr. Collins, Davidson said smoothly, we were surprised by your request. I assume this is about the media fallout? This isn't about the media, Richard said, his tone sharp but calm. It's about you. A low murmur rippled through the room. Davidson blinked, pretending confusion. Me? Richard placed a thick stack of papers in front of him. These are records from the so-called Grace Outreach Fund, a fund you created without authorization, using my wife's name. Davidson's eyes flicked to the documents, then back to Richard. I think you misunderstand. No, Richard cut in. You stole money meant to save Angela Bennett. You forged documents in her name. You used Grace's kindness to cover your greed. The room fell silent. Every face turned toward Davidson. That's a serious accusation, Davidson said coolly. Do you have proof? I have more than proof, Richard said, sliding a printed letter across the table. This is Grace's handwriting. She confronted you days before she died. She knew you were lying. For a moment, Davidson's mask cracked. You don't know what you're talking about, he hissed. I was protecting the company. You were protecting yourself, Richard said, voice steady. You took everything from Angela Bennett, and you let Grace carry the guilt to her grave. Thomas stood from his seat. These documents are enough for a federal investigation, he said. Davidson's face went pale. You'd destroy your own company for this? Richard met his eyes. For this? Yes. Because a company built on lies deserves to fall. No. One spoke. Then one board member quietly pushed back his chair. I second the motion to remove Robert Davidson from the board. Another followed. Then another. Within minutes, the vote was done. Davidson sat frozen as security entered the room. This isn't over, he muttered, standing. It is for you, Richard said. Grace believed kindness was strength. You turned it into weakness. That ends today. When the doors closed behind Davidson, the room let out a slow breath. Thomas looked at him. You just set fire to everything. Richard nodded. Then maybe something honest will grow in the ashes. Later that evening, back at the house, the twins were drawing again by the fireplace. Mia looked up. You look tired, Uncle Richard. He smiled faintly. Just a long day. Anna handed him her picture. The same 3 figures. This time standing in front of a big house with a bright sun overhead. That's home, she said proudly. Richard felt a lump rise in his throat. Yes, he said softly. That's home. That night, as the girls slept and the house grew still, he stepped outside onto the balcony. The city lights shimmered below. And for the first time, he felt no distance between himself and the world. Grace's voice echoed in his memory. Kindness is not weakness. It's courage that remembers love. He looked toward the horizon where dawn would soon rise and whispered, We did it, Grace. They're safe. The wind carried the words away, gentle and warm. And somewhere inside him, the ache of loss finally turned into peace. These are records of your personal transactions through the Grace Outreach Fund, Richard said, his voice calm but sharp. You used my wife's name to build a fake charity. You stole from it. And you manipulated a dying woman into giving up everything she owned. Davidson's smile finally cracked. Those are serious accusations. They're also true, Richard replied. And, before you deny it, I've already handed the same evidence to Detective Hayes. The room erupted in whispers. The air seemed to thicken around them. Davidson's face twisted. You're destroying yourself, Richard. Do you know what this will do to the company? I don't care about the company's image, Richard said evenly. I care about justice, and about two little girls who lost their mother. Because men like you thought the truth could be buried. Davidson slammed his hand on the table. You think you can take me down? I built this firm before you ever stepped in. I know every contract, every offshore account. Then maybe the police will find your memory useful, Richard cut in coldly. Because you won't be doing it from this office. Two security guards stepped forward at his signal. Davidson's face drained of color. You'll regret this, he hissed as they led him away. He hissed. Grace didn't die as innocent as you think. The door slammed, all behind him. The silence that followed was heavy, like smoke after a fire. Richard looked around the table. From this day forward, he said quietly, Collins Enterprises will rebuild itself on truth and transparency. If that means losing profit, so be it. We've already lost enough humanity. No one dared to argue. After the meeting, Richard drove to the girls' school. They were waiting by the gate, waving when they saw him. Both ran to the car, laughter chasing the weight from his chest. How was school? He asked, as they climbed in. I got a gold star, Mia said proudly. And Anna helped a boy who fell down. Richard smiled. That sounds like something your mother would have done. On the drive home, the world felt lighter. Justice wasn't finished, but it had begun. That evening, Detective Hayes called. Davidson's in custody, she said. We found evidence linking him to several forged documents, including Angela Bennett's will. You did the right thing, Mr. Collins. Thank you, Detective, he said softly. But this isn't over, is it? No, she admitted. We believe someone else financed Davidson. He didn't act alone. Richard's gaze drifted to a photograph on his desk. Grace holding a newborn, smiling with quiet strength. Then we'll find out, he said. For her. For them. That night he checked on the twins. They were asleep, breathing softly. The nightlight painted gentle shadows across the walls. Their drawings covered everything. Rainbows. Stars. Smiling faces. One new picture caught his eye. A stick figure of him holding two little girls' hands. Under it, in bright crayon, were the words, Our family. His eyes stung. He touched the paper gently. We're gonna be all right, he whispered. Downstairs, the city lights blinked like distant promises, danger and hope woven together. Tomorrow, more truth would surface. But for tonight, he was grateful for peace. The next morning, the estate was quiet. Leaves drifted down like slow golden rain, and the air smelled of autumn and new beginnings. But peace never came without a price. The headlines spread everywhere, corporate powerhouse exposed in charity scandal. Some called him brave. Others said he'd ruined everything. He ignored them. Instead, he made pancakes with blueberries, the way Grace used to. Anna stirred the batter carefully, tongue peeking out in concentration. Do you think Mrs. Collins is proud now? She asked suddenly. Richard froze, then smiled. I think she's smiling somewhere, watching us make a mess of her kitchen. Both girls laughed, and the sound washed his worries away for a moment. After breakfast, the doorbell rang. Detective Hayes stood there, coat buttoned against the wind. Mr. Collins, she said. Serious. We need to talk. He led her inside and poured coffee. I'm guessing this isn't a social call. I'm afraid not. She handed him a file. Davidson didn't work alone. The money trail leads to one of your own board members. A woman named Evelyn Sharp. Richard frowned. Evelyn? She's head of acquisitions. Grace trusted her. She's been using the charity accounts to move money into offshore holdings. Hayes explained. Davidson filed the paperwork, but she signed everything. She's the one who approached Angela with the forged forms. The words hit hard. So she used Grace's trust and Angela's pain to cover her crimes. Exactly, Hayes said. And now that Davidson's gone, she's scared. She knows you'll come for her. Richard's jaw tightened. Then let's make sure she knows I'm not done. Later that day, he called Thomas into his office. I want every detail on Evelyn Sharp, her schedule, finances, emails. 6 months back. Thomas hesitated. Richard, that's dangerous. She's powerful and ruthless. So am I, Richard said quietly. And this isn't revenge. It's justice. That night, rain whispered against the windows. Richard sat in Grace's study again. Her old journal opened before him. On one of the last pages she had written, "Mercy and justice are sisters, but sometimes one must lead the other." He whispered the words to himself. Then tonight, justice leads. By morning, Thomas returned with a flash drive. Everything you asked for, he said grimly. But Evelyn's already talking to the media. She's trying to frame you. Richard exhaled slowly. Of course she is. She's holding a press conference at noon. Then so am I, Richard replied. At midday, reporters crowded his lawn again, cameras flashing against the gray sky. Across town, Evelyn Sharp stood before microphones, calm and rehearsed. Mr. Collins, she declared, was aware of the charity accounts and personally approved every transfer. He's using Davidson's arrest to hide his own guilt. An hour later, Richard faced his own crowd. His voice was quiet but sure. You've heard the accusations, he said. Now hear the truth. My wife believed in compassion, not corruption. Today, I'm releasing proof that certain people in my company twisted her kindness for profit. He handed out copies, bank records, emails, transactions all bearing Evelyn's signature. I was blind, he said. But blindness isn't guilt. The real crime is using kindness as a mask for greed. And that ends today. By nightfall, the story had turned. Evelyn Sharp's name filled every screen, her denials drowned by evidence. Thomas called later. He's not facer. You did it. The board's voting her out. The company's recovering. I don't care about recovery, Richard said softly. I care that Grace's name is clean again. He climbed the stairs. The girls were still awake, sketching in their notebooks. Uncle Richard, Mia said. They said you were on TV again. He smiled. Yes, I had, to tell the truth. Anna looked up. Did people believe you? Some did, he said. The rest will in time. Mia tilted her head. Mom always said the truth takes the long road, but it always gets home. He laughed quietly. Your mom was right. When they were asleep, he stepped onto the balcony. The night smelled of rain and renewal. The city shimmered below, restless but alive. He thought of Grace, of Angela, of the two girls dreaming safely upstairs. He had lost everything that once defined him, but in return, he had gained something far rarer: clarity. The world still saw him as a man chasing redemption, but he knew better. He wasn't chasing it anymore. He was living it one truth at a time. Just as he turned to go inside, his phone chimed. A message from Detective Hayes. One last thing. We found who funded the first offshore account. It wasn't Davidson or Sharp. It came from someone closer to home. Richard's pulse quickened. Closer to home. He looked, toward the hallway where Grace's portrait hung, her smile frozen in time. For the first time, doubt crept in like a shadow. Grace's charity fund. Grace's personal accounts. Grace's locked files. He whispered into the silence. "Grace, what did you know?" The words echoed through the empty house long after he spoke them. He paced the study. City lights smearing gold against the window. The thought that someone tied to Grace, someone inside their life had funded it, all felt unthinkable. Yet the doubt clung to him. The next morning, he rose early, restless. The girls were still asleep, their dreams untouched by the storm brewing outside. He brewed coffee in silence, staring at the curling steam like a ghost of thought. Mrs. Turner entered, tying her apron. "You're up before the sun again, Mr. Collins," she said gently. "You've got that look Grace used to get when she tried to solve the world before breakfast." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I just miss her way of making things make sense." Mrs. Turner hesitated. She always had her own ways of doing good. Sometimes I thought she gave more than she could. Richard frowned. "What do you mean?" "She used to send me into the city," Mrs. Turner said. "Cash deliveries. She said they were for rent or hospital bills. I never asked who for, but she was always in a hurry." Richard's pulse jumped. "Did she ever tell you who received the money?" "No, sir," she said slowly. "But she kept a small brown notebook, names, dates, amounts. Locked it in her desk." "Do you still have it?" he asked. Mrs. Turner thought for a moment. "No, but her old desk's still in the attic. I never cleared it." Minutes later, Richard climbed the narrow steps into the attic. Dust floated in the pale light. The air smelled of lavender and old paper. Grace's writing desk waited under a thin sheet. He pulled it back, heart pounding. Inside the top drawer, beneath faded letters and pressed flowers, lay the notebook, brown leather, worn edges. His hands shook as he opened it. Each page was filled with Grace's neat looping script. Names, amounts, small notes. Angela. Final payment made. Mercy Hospital bill cleared. S. Moretti legal fee covered. Then, near the end, one line made his heart freeze. Transfer initiated for Angela Bennett through Silent Donor Fund. Source: personal account. RC approval required. He blinked, reading it again. RC. His initials. But he had never approved any transfer. Richard stared at the words until they blurred. RC approval required. His initials. But he had never signed anything. A cold weight settled in his chest. Could someone have used his name? Or had Grace done it? To protect him? He turned the notebook's next page. A letter was tucked between the sheets, folded and yellow with time. His hands trembled as he opened it. "My love," it began. "If you are reading this, it means the truth has found you." He swallowed hard. Grace's handwriting was soft, looping, familiar. "I discovered something months before Angela's death. Someone inside our circle was buying patient debts, then claiming their assets when they died. I tried to stop it. When I realized how deep it ran, I moved the remaining money into a private account under your initials. It was the only way to protect the girls. If the fund is ever traced, it will look like your approval, but that is how I kept them safe." Richard closed his eyes. Every breath felt heavy. She had carried this burden alone, even knowing what it would cost her. "Forgive me for hiding this from you," the letter ended. "I wanted Mercy to win, but when Mercy failed, I chose justice in silence. Protect them for me." Tears stung his eyes. Grace hadn't betrayed him. She had been fighting the same darkness all along, quietly, bravely, and alone. He sat back, the attic silent except for the whisper of rain on the roof. The truth was both a wound and a relief. Grace had left him a map, not a mystery. And now, it was his turn to finish what she started. Downstairs, he placed the notebook gently in a drawer beside her photograph. Her smile looked different now. Not just kind, but fierce. Later that evening, Detective Hayes arrived. Her expression softened when she saw the worn notebook. She knew, Richard said quietly. She found them before any of us did. Hayes nodded. Then she saved more lives than we thought. She also saved mine, he whispered. For a while, they stood in silence, listening to the wind outside. Will the case end here? He finally asked. Not yet, Hayes replied. But it will end cleanly. Thanks to her and you. When she left, Richard walked to the girls' room. They were already asleep, arms tangled, faces peaceful. He watched them for a long time, then whispered, Your mother was the bravest person I ever knew. The next morning dawned clear and golden. The storm had passed. Richard brewed coffee and watched the sunlight spill across the kitchen table. Mrs. Turner smiled as she set down the plates. You look lighter today, sir. He nodded. Because I finally understand what Grace meant about kindness and courage. Outside, the maple trees swayed gently, their leaves bright against the sky. Later that day, he took the girls to the park. They ran ahead, laughing, chasing each other through the fallen leaves. He sat on the same bench he and Grace once shared. For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt full, like she was still there, just beyond the wind. Anna ran up and held out a handful of leaves. Uncle Richard, look, they're gold. He smiled. Then keep them safe. They're proof that even things that fall can still shine. As the sun dipped low, he felt peace settle inside him. The world had broken, but it had also healed in small, beautiful ways. Grace had left him love, Angela had left him truth, and the twins had given him a reason to keep going. He looked toward the horizon, where the last light glowed against the clouds, and whispered, It's over now, Grace. We made it. The wind carried his words into the fading day, soft, warm, and free. And somewhere deep in his heart, a quiet promise bloomed again. Kindness is not weakness. It's the courage to love, even after loss. The signature line at the bottom wasn't his handwriting. It was Grace's. He turned the page and found a note, written quickly in her familiar hand. Richard, if you find this, please forgive me. I used your approval credentials to move funds fast. There was no time to explain. Davidson was cutting Angela off. I had to save her, even if it meant lying to you. If this brings you pain, I'm sorry. Love. Grace. The room seemed to tilt. Grace had used his name to move the money, the same transfer that now tied everything to him. The scandal, the questions, the whispers. All of it came from her desperate act of mercy. He sank down on an old trunk, the notebook trembling in his hands. For 2 years he had remembered Grace as pure light. Now he saw the shadows too, the small betrayals born from love. When Mrs. Turner called that the girls were ready for school, he didn't answer. He just stared at Grace's handwriting, feeling both hurt and grateful. She had broken his trust to keep her promise. At breakfast, he watched Anna and Mia chatter about a school art project. Their laughter grounded him. Love, he thought, wasn't tidy. It was messy, flawed, sometimes dangerous, but always real. Later that afternoon, he met Detective Hayes. She slid a file toward him. We traced the offshore money. It belonged to your wife, but it wasn't embezzlement. Every dollar went to medical charities. Davidson couldn't touch it. She outsmarted him. Richard handed her the notebook. She used my credentials without telling me. Hayes skimmed through the pages, then met his eyes. She trusted you enough to risk your name. He nodded, slowly. She knew I'd forgive her. Eventually. Hayes leaned forward. Your wife wasn't naive. She understood how easily power corrupts. Maybe she believed love, and what we do for it, is the only thing that keeps us human. Her words struck deep. Grace hadn't left him guilt. She'd left him direction. That evening, he found the girls at the piano. Anna pressed the keys gently, trying to copy a tune. "Mrs. Collins taught my mom a song," she said. "She used to sing it when we were scared." Mia joined her, humming softly. The melody was simple but full of warmth. Richard stood in the doorway, eyes stinging, until Anna looked up. "You okay, Uncle Richard?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, I just remembered something beautiful." That night, he sat by the fire, the notebook open beside him. Grace had lied, but she had done it for love, not gain. Her mercy had brought chaos, but it had also saved lives. He lifted his glass toward her photograph. "You always did. Play by your own rules," he murmured. "And I guess I'll keep playing by them too." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, the girl's faint song still lingered. For the first time, the truth didn't crush him. It steadied him. Grace's secret hadn't broken her legacy. It had made it real. He stared into the firelight and whispered his promise. "Whatever comes next, I'll finish what you started." The next morning, a heavy fog rolled over the hills behind the estate. Richard sat at his desk, the brown notebook open beside his coffee. Grace's final words echoed in his mind. "If this brings you pain, I'm sorry." It did, but it was a pain that shaped purpose, not despair. He called Thomas at dawn. "I'm reopening the Grace Outreach Fund," he said. Thomas sighed. "Richard, that name's been in headlines for weeks. You really want to do that?" "Yes," Richard said firmly. "This time it'll be what she meant it to be, a living promise. Real help for families like Angela's. Transparent, accountable, untouchable. If you're serious, you'll need independent auditors, trustees. Then find them," Richard said. "And I'll start it with 10 million. Grace deserves that much truth." By the time he hung up, sunlight was breaking through the fog. It caught the edge of Grace's framed photo. For a moment, it almost looked like she was smiling. Downstairs, the girls played with their dolls. Mia had dressed hers in a napkin wedding gown. Anna was arranging flowers in a teacup. "Uncle Richard," Mia called. "We made a wedding." He smiled. "A wedding? Who's getting married?" "Pumpkin and Rosie." Anna giggled. "Ah," he said solemnly. "A perfect match." Mia tilted her head. "Was your wedding with Mrs. Collins pretty?" His voice softened. "It was the most beautiful day of my life. She laughed so much. The photographer had to stop. Their laughter filled the room, and something in his chest eased. Grace's joy still lived here in them. That afternoon, he took the girls to Mercy Hospital, the place where both Grace and Angela had changed so many lives. Dr. Eleanor White greeted them kindly. "Mr. Collins, I heard about the foundation relaunch. Your wife would be proud." "Thank you," Richard said. "This is where she gave everything. It's where I need to begin." Dr. White smiled at Anna and Mia. "Your mother talked about you all the time, said you were her little stars." Anna whispered shyly. "Mom said stars never stop shining, even when we can't see them." Dr. White blinked back tears. She was right. As they walked down the hall, Richard stopped outside Angela's old room. It was quiet, newly painted, but still heavy with memory. Anna slipped her hand into his. "Do you miss her too?" "I do," he said softly. "Every day?" Mia asked. He nodded. "Every day." "Then maybe," Anna said. I can help people here too, like Mrs. Collins did." He knelt. "How?" "Maybe bring toys," Anna said. "Or flowers," Mia added. "Mom said flowers make rooms less lonely." He smiled through the ache. "Then that's what we'll do." That afternoon, they bought books, crayons, Teddy bears, small gifts for the children's ward. Nurses were stunned to see the billionaire and two little girls carrying armfuls of hope. But for Richard, it wasn't charity. It was redemption made real. As they left, a nurse handed Anna an old envelope. "Your mother left this here," she said. "We never knew who it was for." Anna turned it over. "It has our names on it." Back in the car, Richard opened it carefully. Inside was a note in Angela's shaky handwriting. "My sweet girls, if you're reading this, you found the light I always told you about. Mr. and Mrs. Collins were that light. Remember, love doesn't end when people die. It just changes shape. Promise me, you'll help others find it too." Anna wiped her tears. "She knew we'd find you." Richard's voice caught. "I think she did." That night, after tucking them in, he sat in the study beside the fire. Angela's letter lay beside Grace's notebook. He thought about everything, the lies, the mercy, the loss, and how love had somehow woven it all together. Maybe this was Grace's real legacy. Not money, not status, but purpose. He opened his laptop and began typing a new mission statement for the foundation. To protect the forgotten. To serve without reward. To build light where the world sees only shadow. When he finished, he whispered, "That's for you, Grace, and for her." For the first time in years, he didn't feel haunted by what he'd lost. He felt guided by what remained. The next week brought a rare calm. The foundation's relaunch earned quiet praise. His name was finally written beside words like hope and redemption. Each morning, as sunlight touched the windows, the house felt alive again. The girls' laughter filled its halls, and even Mrs. Turner had started baking her famous pie. It was as if the ghosts had learned to smile. One morning, Anna burst into his study holding a drawing. "Uncle Richard, we made this for you." He turned to see three stick figures, him, and the two girls standing under two angels, one dark-haired, one golden-winged. Across the top, in uneven letters, it read, "Our family forever." He couldn't speak for a moment. "It's beautiful," he finally said. "Is that Mrs. Collins and your mom up there?" Anna nodded. "They're watching us," Mia said. "They said we're doing good work." He smiled softly. "Then we'll keep doing it." That afternoon, they visited a small community center, the first to receive funding from the new Grace Outreach Foundation. Volunteers worked quietly, setting up tables and welcoming struggling families. A woman approached, her eyes kind. "I knew your wife," she said. "She helped me pay for my daughter's surgery. I never got to thank her." Richard's voice was gentle. "She'd say you just owe it to someone else now." The woman smiled. "That sounds like her." For hours, he watched the twins hand out toys and food, bright with joy. They looked free, as if they belonged to the light Grace had left behind. When the event ended, Anna tugged his sleeve. "Uncle Richard, can we do this every week?" He laughed. "Every week might be hard, but every month sounds perfect." "Deal," she said, grinning. On the drive home, the city lights shimmered beyond the windows. Mia slept holding her stuffed dog. Anna watched the skyline fade. "Do you miss her?" she asked quietly. "Every day," he said. "But I think she's happy now." Anna nodded, her eyes soft. "Mom used to say, love is like a candle. It doesn't disappear when you share it." He smiled through the quiet. She was right. As they drove on, the night stretched wide and peaceful. Somewhere above them, two lights seemed to shine a little brighter. Grace, Angela, still watching, still guiding. And in that glow, Richard finally understood love never ends. It only finds new hands to hold. It just makes more light. Anna whispered. Richard smiled softly. Then she was wiser than most adults I know. When they reached home, a car was waiting in the driveway. Detective Hayes stepped out, her coat fluttering in the wind. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something heavy. "Sorry to show up without warning," she said. I thought you'd want to hear this in person. Richard's chest tightened. What is it? Hayes opened a folder. We found one more transfer. It wasn't on the earlier files. He frowned. How recent? How? 3 weeks ago, she said. After Davidson's arrest. It came from one of the accounts your wife created, but it was triggered automatically. Richard's heart thudded. How much? $2 million, Hayes replied, sent to a small hospital in Detroit, under the name Angela Bennett Memorial Fund. He blinked, stunned. Grace set that up? We think so, Hayes said. It was scheduled before she died. A time transfer through her legal trust. No one touched it until now. A quiet chill filled the air. Grace was still shaping the world, even after she was gone. Hayes gave a faint smile. She really did think of everything, didn't she? Richard nodded slowly, his throat tightening. She always did. As Hayes drove away, the front door opened. The girls came running out. Uncle Richard, Anna called, holding a small pink envelope. Mrs. Turner said this came in the mail for you. He opened it carefully. Inside was a simple card with no return address. One single line was written in familiar handwriting. The work isn't finished yet, my love. Richard sat down slowly, his fingers trembling. His voice came out as a whisper. Grace's handwriting. Mia climbed onto his knee. Is it from Mrs. Collins? Yes, he said softly. It's from her. Anna's eyes grew wide. What does it mean? He smiled faintly. It means we still have more good to do. That night, the house glowed with the soft light of the fire. The girls were asleep, their drawings pinned proudly on the wall. On the mantel sat 2 candles, one for Grace, one for Angela, burning side by side. Richard watched the flames dance and thought about the card. Grace's love still moved through time, through memory, through him. He didn't question how. Some things weren't meant to be explained. He whispered toward the flickering light. You were right, Grace. The work isn't finished, but I'll see it through. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. In the quiet of the house, he could almost hear her laughter again, soft, warm, and free. The next morning began with sunlight spilling through the kitchen windows, glinting off copper pans and the vase of lilies Grace's favorite. The air smelled of pancakes and maple syrup. For the first time in years, peace felt real. Anna and Mia sat at the table, drawing hearts on napkins with colored pencils. Mrs. Turner hummed softly as she flipped pancakes, her apron dusted with flour. Uncle Richard, Anna said, looking up. Can we make more drawings for the hospital kids? He smiled. Of course. We'll take them when we go next week. Mia chewed her pancake. Thoughtful. Can we make some for Mommy too? And Mrs. Collins? Richard's voice grew gentle. You can. Maybe we'll take them to the garden later to the memorial. The girls nodded seriously. For them, remembering wasn't sad. It was love. In another form. After breakfast, he drove them to Grace's memorial garden behind the estate. Autumn had arrived in full-color gold, rust, and crimson shimmering in the quiet air. The marble bench Grace had designed stood under the willow tree, her name carved simply. The girls placed their drawings at the base of the stone. One had hearts. The other showed 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. Mia whispered softly, Hi, Mrs. Collins. We're taking care of Uncle Richard, just like you said. Richard blinked, startled. What did you say, sweetheart? Mia turned, smiling. Mommy, said Mrs. Collins, asked us to help you not be lonely anymore. He knelt beside her, his breath catching. Your mom told you that? Anna nodded. A long time ago. She said Mrs. Collins helped us when we didn't have a house. She said she was an angel even before she had wings. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. Those simple words broke through years of confusion, guilt, and grief. Grace hadn't just helped Angela by chance, she had known her, known them. When they got home, Richard went straight to Grace's old study. The air still carried her scent, jasmine and cedarwood. Her desk sat just as she left it, filled with photos, notes, and letters from her charity work. In the bottom drawer, hidden beneath a pile of thank you cards, he found a sealed envelope. It was addressed in her handwriting. "My love to be opened when you're ready to forgive me." His pulse quickened. He broke the seal and unfolded the letter. Grace's writing flowed across the page, hurried but graceful. "Richard," it began, "if you're reading this, it means the truth has found you. Or maybe you found it. Angela Bennett wasn't just one of my charity cases. She was my friend, my responsibility. I met her years ago at Mercy Hospital. She was alone, scared, and couldn't afford her twins' birth. I paid her bills, found her a job, and made a promise that her girls would never be left alone. When she got sick again, I knew she had no one else. So I told her that if anything happened to her, I'd care for her children. I didn't plan to keep it secret, but you'd already lost so much after our miscarriage. I couldn't reopen that wound. When she died, I couldn't abandon her daughters. If keeping my promise broke your trust, please forgive me. Those girls reminded me. It might promised of what we lost, a family we never got to have." Richard lowered the letter, his eyes wet. The room blurred. Grace hadn't just cared for those children, she had loved them, long before he knew them. He finally understood. Grace's mercy wasn't weakness. It was courage, quiet, defiant love that never stopped giving. When he walked downstairs, Anna and Mia were building a pillow fort. Anna waved. "Uncle Richard, want to come in? It's the Kindness Castle." He smiled, kneeling beside them. "Kindness Castle, huh? Sounds like a place Mrs. Collins would love." Mia nodded proudly. "We made a rule. No one inside can be sad for more than 5 minutes." He chuckled softly. "That's a very good rule. Do you want to stay for a while?" Anna asked. He hesitated, then crawled inside the fort. The light was warm, the air smelled of cookies, and laughter filled the tiny space. Inside that small, glowing world, Richard felt something he hadn't in years: peace. Grace's secret no longer felt like betrayal. It felt like a bridge, connecting her love for him with her love for the girls. As they whispered and giggled around him, he realized something deeper. Grace hadn't left him behind. She had passed him the torch. He leaned back and whispered quietly, "I understand now, Grace. You didn't save them from me. You saved them for me." Outside, the sky turned rose and violet. And in that fading light, the world felt whole again, filled with promise, memory, and unfinished grace. A soft breeze drifted through the open window of the art center. The room smelled of paint, paper, and time. Grace's spirit seemed to linger in every corner. The girls stood quietly, gazing at the mural on the far wall, 2 hands holding a glowing heart. The words beneath read, "Love is work that never ends." Anna whispered, "She painted that?" Richard nodded. Every brushstroke. Mia reached out, her fingers hovering near the paint. "Body feels warm," she said softly. Richard smiled. That's because she poured her heart into it. A young woman stepped out from a side room, wiping her hands on a paint-stained apron. "Mr. Collins?" she asked, surprised. "I didn't expect to see you here." Her voice carried kindness and a hint of nostalgia. "I'm Lily Thompson," she said, shaking his hand. "I run this place now." Richard looked around. "You've kept it beautiful." Lily smiled. "Grace built something bigger than herself. I was one of the kids she taught here. I wouldn't be who I am without her." He smiled faintly. "She would have been proud of you." Lily hesitated, glancing toward the small office. "Before she passed," she said quietly, "she left something here for you. Told me you'd come when you were ready." From a drawer behind the counter, She lifted a small wooden box, its surface smooth with age. Richard accepted it carefully, as though it might vanish in his hands. He opened it slowly. Inside lay a single Polaroid photo. Grace standing before the same mural, her arm around Angela Bennett. Both women were laughing, their faces bright with life. Under the photo was a folded note in Grace's handwriting. "You once told me I couldn't fix the world. Maybe I still can through you." Richard's vision blurred. He traced Grace's face with trembling fingers and whispered, "You already did." Anna tugged his sleeve. "Uncle Richard, who's the other lady?" He looked down at her. "That's your mom," he said softly. The girls gasped. "They knew each other?" "They did," he said. "They helped each other when they needed it most." For a moment, the world stood still, two stories joining across time. After leaving the center, they walked to the beach. Grace had loved. The sea was calm, the air sweet with salt and promise. Richard sat on a weathered bench while the girls gathered shells. "You kept your promise, Grace," he said to the wind. "You gave me a family." A soft breeze brushed his cheek, like a whisper. When the girls returned, their hands full of shells, Anna asked, "Can we come here again?" "As often as you like," he smiled. "It's our place now." On the drive home, the girls slept side by side. And in the mirror, Richard saw everything Grace had built: her mercy, her courage, her faith alive again. That night, he found an envelope slipped under his door. No handwriting, only the seal of the Collins Foundation. Inside, "You may have redeemed her name, but not everyone wants forgiveness. Some legacies should stay buried." No signature. Someone from the old board. Someone still hiding. Richard folded the note beside Grace's letter. He had walked through grief and guilt. He would not turn back now. The next morning, he called Thomas. "It's time," he said. "For what?" "To open everything. All records. Every truth. No more shadows." Thomas hesitated. "You sound like her." "I hope so," Richard said. "Grace believed love is work that never ends, and so is justice." Light from the rising sun touched Grace's portrait. For an instant, her painted eyes seemed to shine. November came sharp and cold. Richard's study turned into a fortress of files, ledgers, and letters, every secret brought to light. Thomas sighed. "Once you release this, there's no going back." "That's the point," Richard replied. "Transparency is justice." Mrs. Turner entered quietly. "Sir, a visitor, a young woman, Danielle Bennett, Angela's sister." Danielle stepped in. Dark eyes, steady voice. "Mr. Collins, I'm Angela's sister." He froze. "I didn't know she had family." She nodded. "We lost touch. I heard you took in her daughters. They're safe," he said softly. Danielle's voice trembled. "She used to write about Grace, a woman who helped her. I wanted to meet the man keeping that promise alive." Her eyes landed on a photo of Grace and Angela. "That's her," she whispered. "I've never seen this picture." "She and Grace were close," Richard said. "Closer than I ever realized." Then Danielle took out her phone. "There's something you should hear." A faint recording filled the room. "Danny, they want me to sign again. They say it's for the trust for the girls. I don't think it's Grace. Please, if anything happens, find Richard Collins. Tell him it wasn't her fault." Silence followed. Richard clenched his fists. "She tried to protect Grace." Danielle nodded. "She trusted her. Said she was the only person who saw her as more than a problem." Richard's voice broke. "That's who Grace was." Before leaving, Danielle met the girls. "I'm your Aunt Danny," she said gently. Anna blinked. "You look like Mommy." "I know." Danielle smiled through tears. "And you look like her too." Mia hugged her. without hesitation. Danielle knelt, crying softly. She'd be proud of you both. Richard watched them, his heart full. Grace and Angela had mended every broken piece of his world. That night, he whispered to Grace's portrait, "You were right. Kindness doesn't die. It just changes hands." The next day, he stood before reporters. "My wife's legacy has been tangled in lies," he began. "But today, that ends. The Grace Outreach Foundation will open every record. Because real charity has nothing to hide." A reporter asked, "Why risk your name?" Richard smiled faintly. "Because love isn't safe. It's brave." Silence fell, then applause. That night, Anna asked, "Uncle Richard, are you happy now?" "I think I'm finally getting there." Mia yawned. "Then Mommy and Mrs. Collins can rest too." He smiled. "I think they already are." Later, he whispered into the wind, "Thank you, Grace, for everything you left behind." And for a heartbeat, the night air sounded like her laughter again. Winter came early, blanketing the estate in white. Inside, the house glowed with warmth and laughter. The girls hung garlands and paper stars everywhere. Even Grace's portrait wore a wreath of twine and dried flowers. "Angels get cookies too, right?" Mia asked. "Yes," Richard said, smiling. "They're the reason we have a family." Later, as the girls slept, Mrs. Turner said quietly, "Grace would have been proud." He nodded. "She already is." The next morning, snow glimmered outside. On the tree hung a silver heart ornament engraved Grace and Angela. Inside was a note in Grace's hand. "Keep building the light." He pressed it to his chest. "I will." That Christmas morning, laughter filled the house again. Anna whispered, "When we grow up, we'll help people too." Mia added, "We'll be kindness heroes." Richard laughed. "Then, the world's in good hands." That evening, he walked to Grace's garden, brushed snow from the bench, and whispered, "Love doesn't end, Grace. It multiplies." The wind stirred, scattering silver flakes around him, and for a moment, he could almost see her smile. Spring returned, and with it, new hope. The foundation had become more than redemption. It was a movement. Children, families, hospitals, all touched by Grace's light. On the day of the new wing's opening, Richard stood before the crowd, Anna and Mia beside him. "Today isn't about rebuilding a name," he said. "It's about continuing one. 2 years ago, I thought I rescued these girls, but the truth is they rescued me." He looked to the sky. "Grace taught me compassion is courage. Angela taught me love is stronger than fear. This place exists because 2 women believed both." Applause thundered. Anna squeezed his hand. "You did good, Dad." Mia smiled. "Mrs. Collins and Mommy are clapping too." He laughed softly. "Then that's all that matters." Later, in the new wing, he stood before the old mural, the hands holding a glowing heart. Beneath it were the words Grace once painted. "Love is work that never ends," he whispered. "We finished your work, Grace, and we'll keep it going." Outside, the girls' laughter floated through the air. He joined them, splashing in the fountain, laughing like a man reborn. That night, he wrote one final line in Grace's notebook. "We did it. The girls are safe. The foundation lives. Your promise is fulfilled. Love doesn't end with loss, it begins again in those who carry it forward." He closed the notebook gently. "Rest easy, my love. Your light will never go out." The next morning, 2 small voices echoed down the hall. "Dad, it's Saturday. Pancakes Day." He laughed, following them down the stairs as sunlight poured through every window. And in that golden light, he finally understood what Grace had meant all along. Love isn't a moment. It's a mission. And this, at last, was his forever. The story of Richard Collins reminds us, redemption isn't about wealth or reputation. It's about courage, compassion, and the willingness to face the truth. Through two orphaned girls, a man who had lost everything rediscovered what it meant to love and to belong. It teaches that kindness can rebuild what betrayal destroys, and that legacy lives not in fortune or power, but in the lives we choose to protect. As Grace once said, "Love is work that never ends." And in continuing that work, we become the best versions of ourselves.